Forms are one of the most important areas of HTML to get right. When users are interacting with a form, it's typically to accomplish an important task, like applying for a bank loan or applying for a job. As a result, having an accessible form is a must-have. The form element allows us to define a section of our web page for submitting information. Forms contain many other elements, including text inputs, buttons, select dropdowns, range sliders, and more. Let's say we're creating a form for users to submit a request for a restaurant reservation. Our form will include the user's full name, the user's email address, the user's phone number, the desired date, the number of guests, and a button to submit the reservation request. We begin our form by defining the form element. Form elements take a few attributes, with two of the most common being action and method. The action attribute takes the URL that will process the form submission. The method attribute defines the HTTP method the form will be submitted with. For the user's full name, we'll use an input element. As we'll see momentarily, there are different types of form input elements we can choose from, so we need to define the type of input element with the type attribute. For the full name, the input type will be text. We'll also give this element an ID so we can create a label that maps to this element. This allows assistive technology to associate the label with the form element. Before the input, let's add a label. As I just mentioned, we can use the for attribute on the label to reference the input ID. Lastly, we can add a placeholder attribute on the input to provide an example of the type of data this form element accepts. The next element is the user's email address. We will also use an input element for this information, but the type will be email. We'll also add an ID and a placeholder for this form element. Then we'll add a label for the email address. Remember to include the for attribute to associate the label with the input. Since labels and input elements are all inline elements, they will sit on the same line. In order to force a line break and make this a bit more readable, I'll use the break element. Using this element is considered bad practice and can negatively impact users that need assistive technology. It's recommended instead to use block elements or CSS to alter the flow of the text content. But since we're not focused on CSS in this course, I'll use the break element. Next, we'll create the telephone number input. This is the same as the email address, but the type attribute will be set to tel. The date picker is also the same as the previous inputs, but the type attribute is date. For the guest count, we'll use the select element. The select element provides a menu of options. It takes a name, which is the name of the data point that will be submitted to the server, and an ID that we will reference in the label. We can now define the options within the select element by using the option element. Each option takes a value attribute that represents the value which will be submitted to the form. We'll define 4 options, 1 through 4. Lastly, we'll create a button that will submit the form data on click. We set the type of button to submit. If we look at our browser, we'll see our reservation form. This course won't dive into every aspect of creating accessible HTML forms, but using the semantic form elements will ensure that you're on your way to creating accessible forms.